The day my grandson shoved me out of my own wheelchair, I tasted blood and humiliation at the same time. 1 second I was sitting in the living room, sunlight pouring through the blinds of my Texas home, and the next, my body hit the hardwood floor with a crack that echoed louder than my scream. My elbow scraped first, then my hip, then my pride. Oops, he said. Oops. That's what Tyler Brooks called it. I'm 76 years old. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I raised 3 children. I survived cancer. I buried a husband who served this country for 30 years. And that afternoon, my own grandson stood over me like I was a dropped grocery bag. He extended his hand. Small, Grandma. You okay? His voice carried that fake sweetness, the kind teenagers use when they're performing for an invisible audience. You gotta be more careful. I reached up. Of course I did. When you're on the floor, dignity becomes secondary to gravity. But just as my fingers touched his, he pulled his hand back. Oh, too slow, he laughed. Then he mimicked my shaky voice. Tyler, help me up, Tyler. He even hunched his shoulders and pretended to tremble. And I broke. Not physically. Emotionally. Tears came before I could stop them. Hot. Silent. Embarrassing. He rolled his eyes. Why are you crying? It's not like you're dead. That word. Dead. That's when I understood something. He wasn't impatient. He was waiting. Waiting for me to disappear. You see, Tyler moved in to help me after I had knee surgery. That's what he told everyone. What he didn't say was that his parents cut him off financially. He needed a place to stay. I had space. And a soft heart. Big mistake. Every day after that fall became a routine. He'd accidentally bump my chair. He'd move my walker just out of reach. He'd sigh loudly when I asked for water. Grandma, you're so dramatic. Grandma, you're not that fragile. Grandma, maybe it's time for assisted living, huh? He said it casually, like planting seeds. One evening he leaned close while I struggled to stand. You know, he whispered, this house is way too big for just you. Not mean. Not loud. Just calculated. And I cried again that night. Not because of the bruises turning purple along my hip, but because I remembered holding him as a baby, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine. His first steps across this very same hardwood floor. Now those floors held the echo of him laughing while I lay on them. I started noticing things. My mail opened before I saw it. My bank app logged out mysteriously. My jewelry drawer slightly out of place. He wasn't just mocking me. He was testing me, seeing how far he could push. And every time I reached for his hand to help me up, he'd smirk. Sometimes he'd actually pull me up. Sometimes he wouldn't. It became a game to him. But here's what Tyler didn't know. Old age doesn't mean weakness. It means patience. And I stopped crying the day I realized something very important. He thought I needed him. He thought I was alone. He thought I couldn't stand without him. A sweetheart. I built this life from nothing. I didn't survive the 70s, the 80s raising kids, losing a husband, and fighting disease just to be bullied in my own living room. So the day he pushed me again, and laughed again, and said, "Careful, Grandma, you might break," that was the day I decided. If he wanted to play a game, I would change the rules. And I promise you this, by the time I was done, Tyler Brooks would never touch my wheelchair again. Not out of mockery, but out of fear. And what I did to teach him that lesson. Oh honey, nobody in this neighborhood had ever seen a grandmother take revenge like this before. And he never saw it coming. The morning after he shoved me again, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not the sweet grandma smile. Not the oh honey it's okay smile. No. The kind of smile you earn after 76 years of watching people underestimate you. Tyler thought I was fragile. He thought I didn't notice the way he filmed me when I struggled to stand. He thought I didn't see him texting while I was on the floor. He thought I didn't hear him telling his friends, "She won't last another year." I'm basically inheriting a house. Youth is loud. But arrogance? That's louder. So I stopped reacting. When he bumped my wheelchair, I didn't gasp. When he moved my walker, I didn't ask for it. When he mocked my voice, I didn't cry. And that silence? It unsettled him. You see, bullies feed on response. Take away the emotion, And they starve. But I wasn't just staying quiet. I was preparing. First, I made a phone call. Not to my daughter. Not to a lawyer. No, sweetheart. This wasn't about paperwork. It was about character. I called our local church volunteer coordinator and signed up for something very specific. A youth responsibility and leadership initiative. It partnered troubled young adults with community seniors for public service documentation. And guess who I volunteered as a participating guardian? Oh yes, Tyler. He had no idea that 2 days later, a very official-looking email would land in his inbox, congratulating him. Selected community ambassador. He came storming into my room. Grandma, did you sign me up for something? I adjusted my glasses slowly. Oh honey, you said you wanted to help seniors. I thought this would look wonderful on a resume. His jaw tightened. But I didn't. You live here, I interrupted gently. And the program requires proof of active caregiving. Weekly check-ins. Supervisor evaluations. Community reporting. He blinked. Supervisor evaluations? Yes. Because every Wednesday afternoon, a coordinator would now visit the house. They'd interview me privately. They'd ask how my caregiver was performing. They'd inspect safety conditions. And everything was documented. Publicly. He laughed it off at first. Whatever. I'll just fake it. Ah. Sweet boy. You can't fake consistency. The first Wednesday he was polite. Over the top polite. Held doors. Pushed my chair carefully. Called me grandma, like he was auditioning for sainthood. The coordinator took notes. The second week? He slipped. Forgot my medication schedule. Left me alone too long. Made a sarcastic comment in front of her. She wrote it down. By week 3, the program required him to attend a weekend workshop on elder respect and ethical conduct. Mandatory attendance. Miss it. He'd be flagged as negligent in a community care file. Now here's the twist he never expected. This wasn't just a church initiative. It partnered with local universities and employers offering internships. And Tyler had just applied for one. Guess what background references they checked? Community service. Caregiving. Public conduct. One afternoon he walked in pale. They called, he said. Who did? I asked sweetly. The internship office. They asked about my leadership hours. I nodded slowly. Oh. And what did they find? He swallowed. They said there were concerns. Concerns. Such a small word. Such heavy consequences. For the first time I saw it. Not arrogance. Not mockery. Fear. Real fear. That night he didn't move my walker. He brought me tea without being asked. He didn't shove my wheelchair. He adjusted the footrest carefully. And 3 days later, he came into my room quietly. I'm sorry, he said. Not dramatic. Not defensive. Just small. I looked at him for a long moment. You thought I needed you, I said softly. But what you needed was discipline. His eyes dropped. I was just joking. No, y replica calmly. You were practicing cruelty. Silence filled the room. Then I leaned forward slightly. I didn't take your future from you, Tyler. I simply made your behavior visible. That's the thing about bullies. They operate in shadows. Turn on the light, they shrink. From that day forward, he never touched my wheelchair unless I asked. Never mocked my voice again. Never whispered about my house. And before he moved out 2 months later, he did something unexpected. He installed railings in the hallway. Paid for them himself. Left a note on the kitchen table. I forgot you were strong before you were old. Ah. Lesson learned. Not through yelling. Not through legal threats. Not through a will. Through exposure. Because reputation? In America? That's currency. And I reminded him. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And if you ever think a grandmother can't defend herself, just remember. We raised the people who think they're powerful. 3 months after Tyler moved out, I thought the story was over. But arrogance doesn't disappear that easily. It just waits. One Saturday afternoon, my neighbor's granddaughter knocked on my door, phone in hand, eyes wide. Mrs. Brooks, I think you should see this. And there it was. A video. Blurry. Cropped. Conveniently edited. It showed me on the floor. It showed Tyler standing nearby. But it did not show the shove. The caption read, "Taking care of my dramatic grandma be like. #hardlife #caregiver struggles. 40,000 views. Laughing emojis. Comments calling me extra. Attention-seeking. Old and bitter." Ah. So that's what he had been doing. Recording. Saving. Waiting. He thought he could control the narrative. But here's what Tyler forgot. I may be 76. But I understand timing. I did not react publicly. I did not call him. I did not cry. Instead, I called someone else. The coordinator from the Youth Responsibility Initiative. Because remember? Every Wednesday visit was documented. Every evaluation filed. Every concern timestamped. And I had something Tyler didn't expect. Full unedited security footage. You see, after the second time he accidentally bumped my chair, I had a quiet little system installed. Motion cameras. Living room. Hallway. Entryway. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just prepared. And that footage. It showed everything. The shove. The mockery. The hand pull away. The laugh. Clear as daylight. I didn't post it. No. Sweetheart. I did something smarter. I submitted it. To the internship board that had already flagged his behavior. To the community program ethics committee. And most importantly, to his university's conduct review office. I attached one sentence. I believe this material provides context. That's all. No anger. No insults. Just context. 3 weeks later, Tyler showed up at my door. Not confident. Not loud. Not smirking. Pale. Shaking. They rescinded it, he said. The internship. And I'm under review at school. I looked at him calmly from my chair. And why do you think that is? He swallowed hard. You sent them the video. No. I correctajanli. I sent them the truth. Silence. Heavy. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes glossy. I didn't think it would blow up like that. Ah. That sentence. The anthem of every careless generation. I didn't think. I leaned forward slightly. You filmed me at my weakest moment for entertainment. He looked down. You humiliated me publicly. He nodded. You forgot something very important. He looked up slowly. What? I may move slowly, I said, voice steady. But I don't move blindly. Tears formed in his eyes. Real ones this time. Not manipulative. Not defensive. Just consequence settling into bone. I messed up, he whispered. Yes, I agreed. And now? I'll delete it. I'll post an apology. I'll fix it. I shook my head gently. No, Tyler. He froze. You will learn from it. There's a difference. Fixing something is damage control. Learning is transformation. The university placed him on probation. Mandatory ethics training. Community service, supervised. No leadership roles for a year. And the video. He posted a full apology. Admitted editing it. Admitted mistreatment. The comments changed. From laughter. To criticism. To silence. Reputation. Currency. Spent carelessly. And here's the part nobody expects. I didn't hate him. I didn't want his future destroyed. I wanted his character rebuilt. Months later, he came back again. Different posture. Different tone. Grandma, I want to volunteer at the senior center. For real. Not for credit. I studied him for a long moment. And I saw it. Not fear. Not pride. Growth. You may, I said softly. But understand this clearly. He nodded. Respect is not something you perform when people are watching. He swallowed. It's who you are when they aren't. That day, he adjusted my wheelchair before I even asked. Not because someone was documenting it. Not because someone might see. But because he finally understood. Strength doesn't fade with age. It sharpens. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge a grandmother can take is making sure the boy who tried to humiliate her becomes the kind of man who never would again. And if you're wondering whether he ever touched my wheelchair without permission after that, not once. Not ever. Because fear fades. But earned respect? That stays. The night after Tyler stood in my doorway shaking, I did not celebrate. I did not feel victorious. I felt responsible. Because here's the truth nobody talks about. When you expose someone, you don't just punish them. You force them to face themselves. And that is far heavier than any legal consequence. Tyler didn't sleep that night. I could hear him pacing upstairs. The house carried sound differently when guilt lived inside it. Every footstep felt uncertain. The next morning, he knocked on my bedroom door softly. Not the loud, entitled knock from before. A hesitant one. "Grandma, can we talk?" I let him sit. And I didn't speak first. Silence makes young people uncomfortable. They rush to fill it. "I didn't realize it was that bad," he said. "It was just content. People post stuff like that all the time." That word again. Content. I looked at him carefully. "Is that what I am to you?" I asked. "Content." He flinched. Because this time there was no anger in my voice. Just disappointment. "You weren't just laughing at me," I continued slowly. "You were practicing cruelty. And the scary part isn't that you pushed me." He swallowed. "It's that you enjoyed it." That sentence landed harder than any punishment. He couldn't argue with that. For the first time, Tyler had to confront something deeper than consequences, his character. And this is where the real lesson began. The university placed him on behavioral probation. That meant weekly ethics seminars. Real ones. Not online checkboxes. He had to sit in rooms where professors discussed digital exploitation, elder abuse, consent, and public humiliation. He couldn't hide behind jokes there. He couldn't roll his eyes. Because every example they discussed sounded like him. At the same time, the internship board required him to complete 120 verified service hours at a senior care facility before reapplying next year. Not optional. Verified. Documented. And do you know what happens when a young man who mocked weakness has to help feed, dress, and assist people twice my age? Perspective happens. The first week at the senior center, he came home quiet. No headphones blasting. No swagger. Just quiet. On the fourth day, he sat at the kitchen table and stared at his hands. "There's a guy there," he said. He was a firefighter. "He can't button his own shirt anymore." I didn't interrupt. And he apologized to me for being slow. His voice cracked slightly. And I realized, I used to get annoyed at you for that. That was the moment. Not when he lost the internship. Not when the university disciplined him. But when empathy replaced ego. Consequences open the door. Reflection walks you through it. Over the next months, I watched something rebuild inside him. He started asking before helping. "Do you want assistance?" Not grabbing. Not assuming. Asking. He began cooking dinner twice a week without announcing it like he deserved applause. He repaired the loose cabinet hinge I had ignored for months. He researched physical therapy exercises for seniors and asked if I'd like to try them together. Not to perform. Not to film. But to connect. And one evening, as we sat watching the sunset from the porch, he said something that told me the lesson had settled. "You weren't weak," he said quietly. "You were just vulnerable." And I confused that with power. Now that is awareness. Most people go their entire lives without reaching that sentence. Here's what people misunderstand about revenge. Revenge is not destruction. It is correction. If I had screamed at him, he would have hardened. If I had thrown him out immediately, he would have blamed me. If I had quietly endured it, he would have escalated. Instead, I did something far more powerful. I made his behavior visible. I let systems respond. I let consequences educate him. And then I gave him space to choose who he wanted to become. That's strength. And here's the final piece. 6 months later, he reapplied for the internship. This time his file included a verified apology, completed service hours, a recommendation letter from the senior center director, a reflection essay about digital responsibility. He earned it. Not because I handed it to him, but because I forced him to earn back integrity. And the day he left for that internship, he knelt beside my wheelchair before he walked out. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just respectfully. Thank you, he said, for not giving up on me. I looked down at him and smiled. I didn't save you, Tyler, I said. I held up a mirror. And that is something every strong grandmother understands. Age does not make you powerless. It makes you strategic. So if you're listening to my story thinking this is about a boy who shoved his grandmother, no. It's about a grandmother who refused to let cruelty grow unchecked in her own house. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is teach the person who hurt you how not to hurt anyone else again. And that's a legacy far stronger than fear. I thought the lesson had settled. I thought the growth was real. And for the most part, it was. But transformation isn't a straight line. It gets tested. And the real test came the day I decided to sell something that didn't belong to him. It was a Saturday morning. Crisp air. Texas sun stretching gold across the yard. I was sitting at the dining table reviewing paperwork. Not a will, not inheritance documents, but something far more immediate. The deed. This house had been in my name for 41 years. I bought it with my husband when interest rates were wild and our savings were thin. Every wall carried memory. Every floorboard had felt the weight of my life. But I had made a decision. Not out of fear. Not out of pressure. Out of clarity. I was converting the house into a community-supported senior living residence. A small, independent living setup for older women who didn't want nursing homes, but didn't want to be alone either. The legal structure was airtight. The property would be transferred into a nonprofit housing trust. Not sold for profit. Not handed to family. Preserved for purpose. Tyler didn't know yet. Until he walked in and saw the folder. "What's that?" he asked casually. "Plans," I replied. He picked up the paper before I could stop him. And as his eyes scanned the words, his face changed. "You're transferring the house?" His voice sharpened. "Yes." "To a nonprofit?" He laughed nervously. "Grandma, why would you do that?" I folded my hands calmly. "Because it will outlive me usefully." He stood up fast. "So that's it? You're just giving it away?" Ah, there it was. Not concern. Not confusion. Possession. "It was never yours," I said gently. His jaw tightened. "You're doing this because of me." "No. Ian suara tabanli. I'm doing this because of me." Silence. Heavy. Charged. "You don't trust me," he said. Trust. Such a fragile word. "I trust who you're becoming," I replied. "But I do not structure my life around potential. I structure it around principle." That frustrated him, because it removed emotion from the argument. He paced. "You could at least leave it in the family." "It will be in a family," I said. "Just not limited to blood." He stared at me like I had betrayed him. And then, he said something that revealed the last piece of immaturity still clinging to him. "I changed," he said. "Doesn't that earn me something?" Ah, there it is. Transactional growth. He thought improvement meant reward. I leaned forward slightly. "Growth earns you character," I said calmly. "Not property." That sentence hit harder than any punishment before. Because this wasn't about discipline anymore. This was about entitlement. He sat down slowly. "So what do I get?" he asked quietly. And for the first time in months, I smiled warmly. "You get a grandmother who believes in you enough to not bribe you." He blinked. "I am not your retirement plan," I continued. "And you are not my investment strategy." The air softened. "You were cruel once," I said. "You learned. That matters. But goodness isn't a performance that earns inheritance. It's a standard you carry whether money is involved or not." He didn't argue this time. He just stared at the table. And then something shifted. Not fear. Not anger. Understanding. "So the house becomes what?" "A place where widows live independently," I explained. "Affordable units. Shared meals. Community garden. Legal protections." He exhaled slowly. "That's actually kind of amazing." "It is," I said. "And you're welcome to volunteer there. Not as an heir. As a man." That was the final turning point. Because when I removed money from the equation, his respect stayed. He helped me meet with contractors. He helped design accessibility ramps. He researched grant funding. Not because he expected ownership, but because he believed in the mission. And the day we signed the nonprofit transfer papers, he stood beside me, not resentful, not entitled, proud. And afterward, when we walked to the car, he did something small but powerful. He didn't grab my wheelchair. He didn't push. He asked, "Would you like help?" I nodded, yes. And this time, when his hands touched the handles, there was no mockery, no power imbalance, no hidden agenda, just respect. The house was never the real inheritance. The lesson was, and here's the truth most people won't admit, the greatest revenge isn't taking something away. It's proving you were never someone's possession to begin with. He once thought I was waiting to die. Instead, I built something that will live long after both of us are gone. And that's how a grandmother wins. The grand opening of the house happened on a Sunday afternoon. Same porch, same hardwood floors, same sunlight pouring through the windows. But everything felt different. The brass plaque by the door now read, "The Eleanor Brooks Independent Living House, Dignity First." Not memorial, not tribute. I was still alive, very much alive. And standing beside me, in a pressed button-down shirt, hair actually combed for once, was Tyler. 6 months ago, that same porch had echoed with the sound of my body hitting the floor. Now it echoed with laughter. 3 widows moved into the renovated rooms upstairs. Each apartment had its own bathroom, safety rails, emergency buttons, wide hallways. Tyler had personally installed the ramp at the entrance. Measured it twice. No shortcuts this time. Neighbors showed up. Local church members. Even a small write-up in the community paper about innovative senior independence housing. And Tyler? He gave the opening speech. I didn't expect that. He stood in front of everyone, hands slightly shaking, not from arrogance, from humility. "I used to think aging meant losing power," he said into the microphone. "I was wrong. It means learning where real power actually is." I watched him carefully. No performance. No aesthetics. Just honesty. He continued. "My grandmother taught me that respect isn't automatic. It's intentional. And dignity isn't something you protect only when people are watching." You could have heard a pin drop. He didn't mention the video. He didn't mention the shove. But he didn't need to. Growth doesn't erase the past. It honors it by changing direction. After the ribbon cutting, people toured the house. The new residents were smiling. One of them squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for thinking of women like us." That's when I felt it. Not revenge. Not victory. Fulfillment. Tyler stayed late helping move boxes. No complaints. No rusing. At one point, he caught me watching him from across the hallway. "What?" he asked, half smiling. "I'm just observing," I said. "Still evaluating me," he teased gently. I tilted my head. "Always." He laughed softly. That evening, after everyone left and the house quieted down, he rolled my wheelchair onto the porch. And this time, he didn't stand over me. He sat beside me. Same level. Sunset washing everything gold. "Grandma," he said quietly, "why didn't you just throw me out when I pushed you?" That question had been waiting for months. "Because," I answered slowly, "removing you would have protected me, but correcting you protects everyone you'll ever meet." He stared ahead. "You weren't scared of me?" "Oh, I was hurt," I said. "But I've lived long enough to know something important." "What's that?" "Cruelty grows where it's ignored, but it shrinks when it's exposed." He nodded. "You changed my life." I shook my head gently. "No. I changed your direction. You walked it." Silence settled comfortably between us. And then he said something that closed the circle completely. "I don't want the house anymore." I smiled. "You never did." He looked at me confused. "You wanted security," I clarified. "Not property." He let that sink in. "I'm applying for a social impact fellowship next year," he said. "Community housing projects. Like this." Ah, there it was. Not entitlement. Purpose. The same boy who once saw this house as future profit, now saw it as blueprint. Before he left that night, he stood behind my wheelchair again. But he didn't grab it automatically. He asked, "Ready to go inside?" "Yes." And as he pushed me gently across the porch threshold, there was no fear, no tensión, no power struggle, just trust. Here's what people misunderstand about strength. Strength isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. And it certainly isn't about winning. It's about refusing to let disrespect define your story. That day he pushed me to the floor, he thought he had power. Today he understands power differently. Power is restraint. Power is accountability. Power is asking before touching someone's wheelchair. And if you're wondering whether he ever mocked me again, not once. Because he no longer sees an old woman in a chair. He sees the architect of his character. And that is a legacy no one can shove to the ground. You think the story ends when someone learns their lesson. It doesn't. Life tests growth. And the test came a year later. The Eleanor Brooks independent living house was thriving. 6 women now lived there. We had shared dinners, book clubs, even a small herb garden Tyler helped design. He was working with a community housing nonprofit in Dallas, driving back on weekends to check in. People in town started calling him that respectful young man. Reputation rebuilt. But growth under praise is easy. Growth under pressure? That's different. One afternoon, a local news crew came to film a segment about intergenerational housing. They wanted a powerful visual. The producer suggested something staged. "Maybe," she said brightly, "we film Tyler pushing you through the hallway while you talk about resilience." Harmless, right? Symbolic. The camera lights were hot. The hallway looked polished. The women upstairs were watching from the railing, smiling. Tyler positioned himself behind my wheelchair. The producer counted down. 3, 2, 1. And suddenly, in the rush of nerves and performance, Tyler pushed too fast. Not violently, not cruelly, but carelessly. My chair jolted over the threshold strip. My hand slipped. And for half a second, I felt that old sensation. That loss of control. The memory of hardwood floors rushing up at me. The air in the hallway changed instantly. The producer gasped. One of the residents called out, "Careful." Tyler froze. I didn't fall, but I felt the echo. And here is where the story truly completes itself. Old Tyler would have laughed it off. Embarrassed. Defensive. "Relax, she's fine." But this Tyler? He dropped to one knee immediately. Not for the camera. The camera wasn't even focused. For me. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice steady but urgent. I moved too fast. "I'm sorry." That was careless. Careless. Not an accident. Not a joke. Accountability. The producer tried to brush it aside. "We can edit that out." Tyler stood up and shook his head. "No. We're not editing accountability." The hallway went silent. He turned back to me. "Do you want to continue? Or stop?" Choice. Given back to me. I looked at him carefully. And I saw something profound. He wasn't afraid of getting in trouble. He was afraid of repeating harm. That is the difference between fear and integrity. "We'll continue," I said calmly. "But slower." He nodded. Slower. Intentional. Present. The rest of the segment went beautifully. We spoke about dignity, about independence, about community housing. But what stayed with everyone wasn't the speech. It was the moment he owned his mistake. After the crew left, we sat in the quiet hallway. "You felt that, didn't you?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said. He swallowed. "I never want you to feel that because of me again." And here's the most powerful part of this entire journey. I believed him. Not because he promised, but because he had proven. Growth is not never making mistakes again. Growth is reacting differently when you do. That night, he stayed late adjusting the threshold strip himself so no wheelchair would catch on it again. Not just mine. Anyone's. Because once you understand vulnerability, you stop thinking only about yourself. Weeks later, the news segment aired. They kept the stumble in. They kept his apology in. And the reporter ended the piece with this line. "Respect isn't about perfection. It's about responsibility." People called the house inspired. But I know the real miracle wasn't the nonprofit. It wasn't the renovation. It wasn't the viral apology. It was this. A boy who once pushed his grandmother for amusement now protects her balance like it's sacred. And when he stands behind my wheelchair today, he doesn't stand taller than me. He stands accountable. So if you're waiting for the dramatic ending, the shouting, the disowning, the destruction, that's not what strength looks like. Strength is quieter. It's steadier. It's the moment someone chooses respect even when no one is filming. And if you ask me whether I'm afraid anymore? No. Because the boy who once laughed when I reached for his hand is now the man who makes sure my hand is steady before he ever moves. And that is the kind of revenge that transforms generations. There was one thing I never told Tyler. Not when he apologized. Not when he rebuilt his reputation. Not when he stood beside me at the ribbon cutting. I saved it. Because some truths are too heavy for someone who hasn't finished growing. It happened on a quiet Thursday night. Rain tapping gently against the porch roof. The house upstairs humming softly with the lives of the women who now called it home. Tyler had stayed late fixing a cabinet door in Mrs. Henderson's unit. He walked into the kitchen, rolled up his sleeves, and poured 2 cups of tea like he'd been doing it his whole life. He set one beside me. "You look tired," he said. Ah. That tone. Not pity. Not obligation. Care. I am, I admitted. 76 doesn't announce its weight. It whispers it. We sat there in comfortable silence until I finally said it. "Do you remember the first day you pushed me?" His shoulders stiffened immediately. "Yes," he said quietly. "I need to tell you something about that day." He didn't interrupt. He doesn't anymore. When I hit the floor, I continued slowly. I didn't just feel pain. I looked at my hands. I felt small. He closed his eyes briefly. "I know," he whispered. "No," I said gently. "You don't. Because I never told you this part." The rain grew heavier outside. I lay there for a second longer than you think. Not because I couldn't move. He looked up at me. But because I was deciding something. Deciding what? Whether I was going to become afraid of you. That sentence changed the air in the room. He stared at me like the ground shifted under him. "You could have," he said softly. "Yes," I nodded. "I could have started flinching every time you came near my chair. I could have avoided asking for help. I could have lived in tension inside my own home." My voice didn't shake. But I refused. He swallowed hard. "Because fear," I said calmly, "would have given you power you did not deserve." Silence wrapped around us. "That's the part one never told you," I continued. "I wasn't fighting you. I was fighting the version of myself that might shrink." His eyes were glossy now. "I never wanted you to feel afraid of me." "I know," I said gently. "But intention doesn't erase impact." He nodded slowly. That sentence sank deep. Then I told him the final truth. "When you reached your hand out and pulled it away, that hurt more than the shove." He covered his face with his hands. "I was cruel." "Yes," I said plainly. "No sugar coating. No softening. But you are not cruel anymore." That's the difference. Behavior is not identity, unless you refuse to change it. He lowered his hands. "I don't know how to make that right," he admitted. "You already did," I said. He looked confused. "You listened. That's it. Not money. Not speeches. Not public apologies. Listening. You didn't defend yourself," I continued. "You didn't blame stress. You didn't say I was overreacting." He let out a slow breath. "I almost did," he confessed. "That first week, I almost convinced myself you were being dramatic." "Ah, honesty. I'm glad you didn't," I said. The rain softened. And then he asked the question that completed the circle. "Are you proud of me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "I am proud of the work you chose to do on yourself." His jaw trembled slightly. "And I am proud that you didn't run when facing what you did." That night, when he stood behind my wheelchair to help me toward my room, he paused. Not because he was unsure, but because he understood. "May I?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. He pushed gently. Steady. Measured. Respectful. And as we crossed the hallway threshold, the same one that once jolted too hard, I realized something profound. The real revenge was never about exposing him. It was about refusing to let his worst moment define our future. The real strength wasn't in humiliating him back. It was in holding him accountable without losing myself. And here's the final truth I want you to understand. When someone tries to make you feel powerless, you don't win by crushing them. You win by refusing to shrink. The boy who once laughed when I reached for his hand. Now make sure my balance is steady before he ever moves. And someday, when I'm no longer in this chair, when this house continues without me, he will remember not the shame, not the probation, not the consequences. He will remember the choice. The moment his grandmother decided not to be afraid. And that is how you break cruelty at its root. There's something I've never admitted. Not to the residents upstairs. Not to the church board. Not even to Tyler. You've heard about the shove. You've heard about the revenge. You've seen the growth. But there was one day months after everything changed, when I almost gave up. It wasn't dramatic. No cameras. No arguments. No sharp words. Just gravity. I was alone in the kitchen early one morning. The house was quiet. Rain outside again. Funny how rain follows the heavy moments in life. I reached for a mug on the second shelf. Just a little too far. My balance shifted. The chair rolled slightly. And I went down. Hard. This time, there was no shove. No cruelty. Just age. My hip hit first. Then my shoulder. My breath left my body in a sharp gasp. And I lay there. 76 years old. On the kitchen floor. Again. But this time, no one was laughing. No one was watching. No one to blame. Just me. And for the first time, I felt it. Exhaustion. Not physical. Existential. I stared at the ceiling and thought, maybe Tyler was right back then. Maybe I am fragile. The thought scared me more than the fall. Because that's how it starts. Not with someone pushing you. But with you believing you deserve the floor. I tried to sit up. Pain shot through my side. I winced. And then something unexpected happened. The front door opened. Tyler had come by early to drop off new garden tools. He called out, "Grandma?" Silence. Then he heard it. The slight movement. The breath. And he ran. Not walked. Not annoyed. Ran. When he turned the corner and saw me on the floor, his face changed in a way I will never forget. Not panic. Not frustration. Fear. Real fear. "Grandma," he said softly, kneeling beside me. "Are you hurt?" His hands hovered, not grabbing. Waiting. For permission. That's growth. "I'm okay," I said, though my voice shook. "May I help you up?" May I? 2 words that separate force from respect. Yes. He positioned himself carefully. One arm steady behind my back, one supporting my knees. He moved slowly. Intentionally. No ruse. No ego. Just focus. He lifted me like I was something valuable. Not fragile. Valuable. When I was back in the chair, he didn't lecture. He didn't say, "You shouldn't have reached." He didn't say, "This is why you need supervision." He just crouched down in front of me. At eye level. "You don't ever have to pretend you're stronger than you are," he said quietly. And that's when I realized something. Strength isn't refusing help. It's choosing who helps you. I almost believed something ugly just now. I admitted. "What?" he asked. "That maybe I belong on the floor." His expression hardened. Not at me. At the idea. "No," he said firmly. "You belong exactly where you choose to be." He stood up and adjusted the shelf later that afternoon. Lowered it. Secured it. Didn't make a speech about it. Just fixed the problem. That's maturity. Solving instead of shaming. And as I watched him move around the kitchen, steady and capable, I felt something deeper than pride. Peace. Because the real test of his growth wasn't how he acted when he was guilty. It was how he acted when no one had done anything wrong. That fall wasn't about revenge. It was about reality. Age will take things from me. That's inevitable. But disrespect? That no longer lives in this house. That night, as he was leaving, he paused at the door. "Grandma," he said. "Yes. If you ever fall again." He stopped. I raised an eyebrow. He smiled softly. "I'll be there." Not possessive. Not controlling. Just present. And here's the final truth of this story. The first time I hit the floor, I learned how strong I was. The second time, I learned I wasn't alone. And that's how you know the lesson truly took root. Because the boy who once pulled his hand away, now keeps it steady. Not out of fear. Not out of obligation. But out of love. There is one kind of fall no one prepares you for. Not the kind where your body hits the ground. The kind where your mind slips. It started small. I misplaced my keys twice in 1 week. Forgot Mrs. Henderson's cat's name. Called Tyler by his father's name without realizing. At 76, you notice these things. You don't panic. But you notice. One afternoon, during our weekly dinner in the shared kitchen, I stopped mid-sentence. The women were laughing about something. I don't even remember what now. And suddenly the word I needed just vanished. Not delayed. Gone. The room waited. I smiled and waved it off. Senior moment, I joked. But inside, something cold moved through me. Later that night, I sat alone in my bedroom and tried to replay the story I had been telling. Blank space. And for the first time since Tyler pushed me that day long ago, I felt powerless again. Not because of cruelty. Because of uncertainty. The next morning, Tyler stopped by with groceries. He noticed immediately. You okay? I hesitated. Here's the thing about being the strong one. You don't like admitting when the ground shifts beneath you. I forgot something yesterday, I said carefully. He didn't interrupt. I couldn't find the word for it. It just disappeared. He didn't brush it off. Didn't say, that happens to everyone. Instead, he pulled out a chair and sat down. Do you want to get it checked? He asked gently. No panique. No assumption. Just support. We scheduled an appointment. And yes, we went to see a neurologist. Not a dramatic diagnosis. Not a movie scene. Just early mild cognitive impairment. Age-related. Manageable. But real. When the doctor explained it, Tyler didn't squeeze my hand like I was fragile glass. He listened. He asked questions. He took notes. Medication options. Brain exercises. Lifestyle adjustments. On the drive home, I stared out the window. So this is how it goes, I said quietly. He glanced at me. How what goes? First the knees, I said. Then the memory. He parked the car and turned toward me fully. Grandma, he said steadily. Losing a word doesn't mean losing yourself. I let out a slow breath. You once told me fear gives people power they don't deserve, he continued. Don't give this fear more than it deserves. When your own lessons come back to you. Strange, isn't it? That night we made a plan. Labels on cabinets. Shared digital calendars. Weekly cognitive games, which he insisted on losing dramatically just to make me laugh. He didn't treat me like a patient. He treated me like a partner. Weeks passed. Some days were sharp and clear. Some days were foggy. But here's the moment that sealed everything. One evening, I forgot his name. Just for a second. He walked into the room, and my mind stalled. I knew his face. Knew his story. Knew his heart. But the name caught in the hallway of my brain. He saw it happen. And instead of correcting me quickly, instead of looking wounded, he smiled softly and said, It's Tyler. Not offended. Not dramatic. Just present. It's okay, he added. I know you know me. And that's when I understood the final layer of growth. The first time I fell, he laughed. The second time I fell, he lifted me. Now when I slip internally, he steadies me without making me feel broken. That is love matured. That is character formed. Months later, during a community meeting at the house, someone asked me how I managed to build something so strong at my age. I paused. Forgot the first word I planned to say. The room waited. Tyler stood in the back. Watching. Calm. And then the word returned. Respect. I said clearly. This house was built on respect. And I meant more than architecture. I meant us. Because here's the truth no one tells you about aging. You don't need someone who makes you feel powerful. You need someone who refuses to let you feel invisible. The boy who once mocked my trembling hands now holds steady when my memory trembles. And if one day I forget the details of this story, If the dates blur, if the sequence fades, I hope one thing stays rooted inside me, that I was never weak, that I chose not to shrink, and that the hand which once pulled away, now stays, even when my mind wanders. That is how the story ends. Not with revenge, not with regret, but with redemption that lasts longer than memory. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment and subscribe my channel.